Hello everyone, welcome to Sky Sports Fantasy Football video courtesy of Fantasy Football Scout. I am Luke and joined as ever by Niall. Niall, how was your game week, mate?
We said when we sat here last week there was going to be a lot of us feeling sorry for ourselves. I'm not feeling as sorry for myself this week, but it wasn't the best week. I would say last week was a 2 or 3 out of 10. This was probably a 5. How about you?
Yeah, five's generous. I think it's been two shocking weeks for me since Overhaul. Doing much better on my B team, but it's basically due to one man, Cristiano Ronaldo, I suppose. Well, not one man, there was some other things as well, but he's the main issue. But yeah, it's still early days. I don't want to moan too much. It's still early days. We've got a lot of games to come, and yeah, I'm sure we talked about it before. With so many good premium options and not being able to fit them all into your team, there's going to be some disgusting swings to come, isn't there, in the future weeks? And you just have to hope you're on the right side of the majority of them, and that's the name of the game. Talk us through how it went then, per player, if you can.
Yeah. So I broke 100 points, which was obviously welcome, but I think a lot of other top managers had points that were up to 120, 130 mark. I was on 108, so standard, I think probably run of the mill captain Salah getting 30 points on the Saturday, and then Ronaldo getting a 10 points double to 20 on the Sunday. I Yeah, so there were still a few misnomers this week. So obviously everyone knows about Mendy. He didn't turn up on Sunday.
Yeah.
A lot of people having taken Pickford out who didn't turn up on Saturday, who's out with a shoulder injury. I was carrying Richarlison into the game week from DCL getting injured. So sure as hell, Richarlison's followed him up with an injury too. I was going to be getting rid of Richarlison anyway. I moved him on to Lukaku, who had a rare blank. So hopefully that's me not ruined him. There was no Torres from Man City, so that was another kick in the balls. And I didn't have Webster. Obviously, he was already injured, but I decided to hold Webster this week just because I was assessing the options. And I'm actually quite glad that I did, because I don't think any of the other replacements did hugely well. So yeah, highlights from the week. Obviously, Salah and Ronaldo. I think that the highlight of my overhaul so far, this might sound silly because the guy's only got 6 points. It's actually El Yunusi. El Yunusi, he's 6.3 million for Southampton, and he looks like he's bedding himself into the team. He picked up a rogue tackle bonus away at Man City at the weekend and looked pretty good. So I'm optimistic about that. And obviously, Rafinha getting that haul on Friday night. Is he injured as well? We don't know. So yeah, problems still with the team going forward in terms of transfers required, but overall not terrible despite all the injuries.
Yeah, nice. I mean, I suffered a lot of what you did there. So, I mean, I've got Mendy, for example. I've got Torres. Yeah, Lukaku I bought in as well for Richarlison. Thanks for Richarlison, Niall, by the way. You talked me into it. Now, I'm not going to blame you. I make my own decisions at the end of the day. Yeah, so it's not been great, but my team's right up on the screen there. I got 92 points. Obviously missed the keeper, as I just said. Christensen played. That was nice. They didn't get passing bonus, the Chelsea defenders, but I'm not going to complain if they're going to pick up clean sheets instead. That's absolutely fine. The strange thing for me is I actually had no captain on Sunday the 19th, because obviously Antonio had his red card. So before I bought in Lukaku, I was actually on captain Rudiger, and I was deciding whether to bring in Lukaku for Richarlison or not. Now, had Richarlison been fit, I might have just held off, because Everton have obviously got Norwich this week, and then done the Lukaku move later on, which was my original plan when Calvert-Lewin was there. But obviously when Richarlison didn't play, I was like, well, he's not going to be back in time for Norwich anyway, so I'm going to do it. So obviously the captain then goes to Lukaku. It was just so funny how the chain of events changes things, because I actually would have put some points back there with captain Rudiger, because if you look at my team, there was no other person I was going to captain on that day. Traore in my team, he's just been, I mean, I know he picked up a man of the match the other day, but that was a big letdown. I also went one step further and bought in Marcal for Webster rather than hold it. I wish I didn't do that, because straight away, it wasn't just the fact that he got the 1 pointer, the level of performance from him was just, it was not good, was it? It was a bad game for Marcal. He looked very, very dodgy, very suspect. He actually got hooked, I think, as well towards the end.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, not surprising. And I knew he was a rotation risk, but I still did it. I don't know why I do this to myself. So I'm already making transfers in areas that I really shouldn't. So we'll have
I can
to
see
see.
the logic. They've got good fixtures, all that stuff, but yeah, he was tragically bad on Saturday. Fingers crossed for you. That's not him now planted to the bench for a couple of games, but
Yeah, I wouldn't be
that was
surprised. I mean,
disappointing.
the thing that made me go for him was the fact that when I did my little article for Fantasy Football Scout, and I was looking at the options, and I had never really considered him, as I just think he's too injury prone and he's a rotation risk. But obviously Wolves have been doing pretty well in terms of the stats, not really the returns. He obviously got 2 assists the week before and was so advanced up the pitch. I thought, okay, fair enough. But it was the tackle bonus. It was 3 times in 4 weeks. I thought, okay, I don't like to get a defender if they don't come with bonus, but apparently he can get bonus. So, if they do get beat, he'll hopefully pick that up. But sod's law, he doesn't get that in this game. But there we go. If he's a problem and he's not playing, then I will have to fix it. And if your mate Elyounoussi keeps playing, he's around the same price. I can just stick him in midfield, or I can go to Duffy, who even looks more nailed on now again, some injuries potentially, or look to find the money. I'm hoping in some ways that this week Traore gets injured, to be honest, because I don't want him on my team, so I can switch him to Gallagher and then I can have some more money for someone at the back or something. But there we go.
Hang on a minute, you're telling me that after the start that we've had, I mean, you've probably had about 9 injuries in the first 2 weeks. You're telling me you're wishing for another injury at this stage, but are you mad?
Yeah.
Be careful what you wish for sure. You might end up getting you might be getting Lukaku injured or something with these wishes.
Yeah. I think I've got an average of about 5.6 players per game week at the moment, either injuries or dropping. It's just, it's not been good. Anyway, we're going to start off with the questions. We think it's probably the best way to do it, just because then we don't cover a lot of the questions in our normal chat, because obviously the hot topics are the things that are plaguing our minds as well. So hopefully you guys can see the questions there on the screen, and we're just going to work through them. So I'll fire them your way first now. So this is from John_NUFC. Is Ramsdale too risky a pick for a goalkeeper? I need to replace Pickford. Unfortunate there. And it's either him or Martinez to cover the captaincy in the Villa versus Arsenal game. Or is it worth skipping and getting another keeper? What do you think?
Jeez. I was hoping you were going to bed me in easily there with some underhand questions before you go for the overhand, but that's a good question from John, and a question I think a lot of people will be thinking about just now. So the answer I would say is, if Ramsdale's going to play, he's a great option. It means you can bring in an Arsenal player, covered off those 2 games. If you're needing to make a transfer anyway, I think he picked up man of the match at the weekend. He looks surprisingly solid for someone who I thought was pretty terrible for Sheffield United at times last season. The big question mark is he actually going to be playing every game? And I think Arteta's comments last week, granted, I think it was before his performance at the weekend, so he's probably done himself favours by that performance at the weekend, was that he's not decided between the 2 of them. And so, I think he is a risk. And the last thing you would want to do is bring him in this week. It's still 3 or 4 weeks until that Arsenal game. I think it's the 18th of October that they're actually required. A lot could change between now and then. That's the only caution that I would urge. But I think he's a good option. I could see myself bringing him in. Put it this way, if I was in your situation, I could see myself bringing him in, but I'd be scrutinising every comment that Arteta has made about him before I did so, because the last thing you want is to have no captain after having spent a transfer bringing an Arsenal player in when you absolutely need them. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think he probably is going to stay in the first team, because as soon as they've come in, I mean, he's lucky in a way, because the fixtures have obviously been very good from the moment he's come in, so you could argue that if Leno was playing, it wouldn't have been any different, but I don't think that necessarily means anything. The fact that Ramsdale's come in and they've done well, they've kept the clean sheets, suggests that to me he's now the first choice. Now, could that change if he pulls a howler? Potentially, I suppose. So I suppose it comes down to, it probably shouldn't work like this, but for me it would probably come down to how many transfers I've used already. If I've used more than I expected at this point due to injuries and people getting dropped like I have, then I currently, like most, I think, had an Arsenal transfer planned in, for the double week, and then to take someone out. So that's another 2 transfers. Now, if you don't really want to use them, then I think going for Ramsdale kind of takes that out of the equation. You bring in the keeper in, then you can argue you can keep him for a long while. So you're kind of saving yourself transfers just by going for him. And let's be fair, most of the Arsenal captains for those 2 games, Ramsdale could easily be the best one, to be honest. There isn't any massive standout there.
Yeah.
So I do kind of like it, but I do. I mean, this is a man talking who's had about 5.6 players per week, and Niall's saying there's a chance they might miss out. So if it was just I'm going to get a keeper and leave him for the rest of the season, I still think Raya, despite the games are really bad for like the first sort of 3 or 4, then they go on a really nice run of about 4 games, I think, after that. But he's already shown, I think, that he's probably the best cheap keeper, and I've said it many times. I think just having no money in goal is sometimes a really good thing, just to allow you to those other moves. I mean, I'm sat with Mendy right now, and it's great when it works. I think he's the other really good option. But for a start, he's injured at the moment, so I wouldn't be bringing him in right now, just in case. I look at my team and I'm stuck with the likes of Marcal, for example. I'd like that extra money to go to that next level of defender. I'd really love to. And the first place I looked was, well, where can I chop and change? It's always the goalkeeper. So I just think Ramsdale, I don't mind it. I'd probably be tempted to do that, but Raya is probably just the easy season hold pick now, I think, at the low price, to just give you the max flexibility. And he might not end up being, the top 5 goalkeepers, but I think he'll be there or thereabouts. I don't think it'll be too much difference between him and, say, Sanchez or anyone like that. I think it'll be pretty close in the end. So that would be my tips. I know it's kind of fancy, but it's a tough question, to be honest. Good luck with it.
One thing I would add finally, though, on the Arsenal dilemma, because this is a question that I imagine will come up later on. There's a case to be made that Ramsdale or the goalkeeper, if it ends up being Leno or Ramsdale, are probably looking like the best options, because the defenders, the centre backs, just aren't getting passing.
Yeah, I know.
I think White hasn't been anywhere near it. I don't think he's had passing bonus once this season.
I don't think so.
Could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. So yeah, last season a lot of people brought in Rob Holding. I actually brought in Leno last season for the Arsenal doubleheader. But yeah, if they get the clean sheet, they get the extra 2 points, whereas the extra 2 points that you might be relying on through passing bonus, I'm not sure will come from White or from Gabriel. So this is what I hate giving an on-the-fence answer, but if he is going to be nailed on, I think he's probably the best, certainly best Arsenal defensive option.
I suppose you could look at it like this. If you bring him in and then for some reason he does get dropped and then you have to use another transfer, that's pretty much the same as going for another Arsenal player as captain for 2 weeks and then transferring him out again. In terms of transfer use, it's quite similar. And in this case, you are fixing a problem. Yeah, you might then have to refix it again, but I think the chances are pretty slim. Mark Stevenson says, looking to take advantage of Chelsea's plum run of fixtures coming up. Question is, Lukaku or triple down on my Chelsea back line? And if a defender, which one would you pick between Azpilicueta, Alonso and Christensen? So he's got Mendy and Rudiger at the moment in his team. So he's basically asking which third one to add, Lukaku or Christensen, or even Lukaku he's throwing in there. So out of those 4, I mean, I'll start first. I think out of the 4, I'd probably still go Lukaku, because I know Chelsea's defence is incredible, and we'll probably regularly pick up the 10. But it's already been shown that pretty much any of them can drop out random game. I can't really see that happening for Lukaku. And if the fixtures were different, I'd probably say the defender. But because the fixtures look so good, I feel like Lukaku will hit a couple of, that might hit a brace in a game, might hit a hat-trick in a game. There's a high ceiling there with Lukaku, whereas with the defenders, yeah, Rudiger scored this week, but you're looking at 10 points, aren't you, most of them? Perhaps not for Alonso. I've underlooked Alonso. Well, what's your thoughts on Alonso? He's so cheap in this game. The bottom line is, if he's playing every week, we've got to have him, haven't we? Because that is a mad price.
Without doubt, this is another difficult question. So the fixtures that he's talking about, right? They've obviously got Man City this weekend. You get to see the lineups. That's good. But then following that, here are the games, right? They've got Southampton at home, Brentford away, Norwich at home, Newcastle away, Burnley at home. That's unbelievable. And for a defence as solid as they are, generally they like to stat pad as well by knocking the ball around between themselves at the back. So, they're just absolutely perfect assets for this game. I'm in his situation. I was in that situation at the weekend. I had Chelsea defenders that he talked about, obviously Mendy and goal, but I still chose to bring in Lukaku. I just think that you saw in the game before that you can quite easily just score a brace despite having a quiet game. And with the players, with the teams that they've got coming up, I do think that it's going to be difficult to choose a standout option amongst the defenders to captain, whereas with him, he's guaranteed to play, and if they're going to be scoring goals, you're thinking they're going to come through him. I know that he didn't get on the score sheet the weekend, but he should have at least got a bonus of some kind. And Kovacic missed a great chance. I think Werner fluffed his lines a couple of times when he could have laid him in.
Yeah,
he does look like he's a classic flat track bully, isn't he, Lukaku? A bit like Kane, or a bit like Kane used to be. Probably coming to him a bit later on. But I would probably still favour Lukaku, but I wouldn't talk you away from having an extra defender if your budget could stretch that far, or if you wanted to use a transfer on it. And Alonso just looks out of this world. He's one of those players that when he's performing, when he's playing in the team, he could be 10 million. He'd still be value. I mean, look at the points returns the guy's had this season. I've not got them in front of me, but I know that he's had at least 3 or 4, maybe even more than that. Probably three at least double-figure hauls. He's threatening goals, he's getting assists. I think he's even maybe got a shot bonus a couple of times. And with these fixtures coming up, you could feasibly also get some passes occasionally as well if they really do knock the ball around. So yeah, is he 7.8? I think he is, which is the same price as
he's 7.9.
7.9, fine, 7.96, around the same price as Gray, Benrahma, Traore, all of those players. And yeah, he's absolutely in my thoughts. And I'm thinking possibly this weekend, I've held on to Webster. I was thinking, is there a way I could maybe downgrade elsewhere so I could put Webster up to Alonso? You get to see the lineups this week, and I think you get to see the lineups again. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think you get to see the lineups again either next week or in a couple of weeks' time. So that's the thing. And again, we'll have to just monitor the Chilwell situation, but it does seem to me as if there's maybe something wrong with Chilwell physically, or he's had a falling out with the manager, because Alonso's the only defender in that team, I think, apart from maybe Rudiger, who hasn't been rotated at all, which is really unusual, especially given they've got 2 outstanding wing-back options in him and Chilwell. So yeah, I think there's possibly something going on there. But yeah, if Alonso is going to play these next 5 or 6 games, heaven knows how many points he could score, and he's a legitimate captain option as well. I don't know what you think of Alonso, but he's certainly on my radar.
I'm so scared to bring him in because of my start and the extra transfers I've had to use, and I've so many players just not really turning up, and I know a lot of that's down to luck at the end of the day. Antonio getting a red card, I can't do anything about that. Torres, I knew was had some rotation in him, can't complain about that one. But Calvert-Lewin, it feels like you want to pick up completely nailed players from now. In your psyche, it's like, right, I've got to just have nailed players now. I can't be dealing with having 6 or 7 players. But in reality, the only one that's really been rotated out of the team for me is Torres. Even Trent, I mean, I don't have him in my team, but I have him in my B team, for example, had an illness thing, didn't he? And Christensen for 1 game. So it's not that bad, really, is it? And you're right, I just think those 5 games, how on earth is he not getting an absolute bag full of goals versus the likes of Norwich and stuff? He's just going to get so many points, isn't he, if he's playing? I do think with Chilwell, it is only a matter of time still, and I know this is a common thing that we do as fantasy football managers. Like a casual manager would just log in, he's on 51 points, top of all defenders, see that price and go, are you mad? It'd be straight in a team. They wouldn't even give it a second thought. And it's just, for me, I just feel like if I go there, it will end up being a problem. But is it just one other transfer to fix it? Maybe it's a problem you can't afford to be without, if you know what I mean. You can't afford to miss the boat again. Similar to the Torres thing, which so far I've got wrong, but I feel like he's the kind of player where if you miss out, it can really, really hurt. So out of those 3, I think Alonso is probably the best bet, because Christensen's, I know he's been getting 10 points when he plays usually. Didn't this week, but obviously with him and Thiago Silva, it's not 100% clear. He's already got Rudiger and Mendy, and with Azpilicueta, let's not forget he missed one of the games as well. I don't think he's completely nailed. He's definitely a favourite, but I think he's like 31, 32 or something now, Cesar Azpilicueta, and in Champions League games he'll definitely be playing. So you always have to remember that because he's nailed on for the Champions League games, the game either side of it is a slight risk for him, I think. So therefore, look, it all leads to Alonso, which I can't believe I'm saying. There we go. Let's move back to the question. So Lee Williams says, would you move Webster to Gray to cover Everton? He did have Pickford, but he had to replace him. So yeah, would you bring Gray in for Webster? We're not big fans of Gray over here, are we?
No. I mean, he almost scored again at the weekend, but
He did.
He still sits in the. I'm probably going to end up with egg in my face. I think he still sits in the flash in the pan category for me a little bit. His stats aren't backing up the outcomes. But that said, if Richarlison's going to be injured, DCL's going to be injured, he's probably going to be one of their main attacking threats, and he's going to be guaranteed 90 minutes. So he's good enough value. As it stands, I'm actually looking at that Wolves versus Everton game and thinking, I've used a couple of transfers. Do I need to be bending over backwards to bring in either of their players? Watched both teams playing at the weekend; they were both pretty dismal. And I don't see any standout options really from either team. And so I might be penciling that in as a skip. So I think with that in mind, I think if you've got that money and you would be looking to bring in Gray, I'd be looking towards Ismail Sarr before I bring in Gray, and they're exactly the same price. Now I know you're not getting the captaincies out of Sarr, but he looks like Watford's talisman, and they've got good games coming up too. So I'd lean more towards Sarr than I would towards Gray. But I'm keen to hear what you think of that one.
Yeah, I don't think I'd get Gray. I mean, he's fine because I'm sat with Traore on my team, for example. I think they're quite similar. I think Traore had a lot better stats. But then you look at the output. I mean, Traore's got no goals and Gray's got one in every game. It feels. I mean, I'm just moaning again about my luck here, but I think I put him in that similar category, and I do that because I think that could easily just switch around. For another 3 weeks, Gray might not score, and then Traore could, and I think maybe there's an element of missing out. I could be wrong. I think he's fine. The fixtures are still okay, but I'm with you. That Monday, the 1st of November game, the Wolves versus Everton. I honestly believe that if you haven't got anyone in your team from those two teams, or you want to take someone out or whatever beforehand, because they're not performing, like Marcal or whatever, I don't think you need to worry about it, because I think the Everton Burnley game showed us that if you haven't got a captain, sometimes it doesn't really matter that much. Now I know Gray scored, that's great, but we had Calvert-Lewin who didn't turn up. If you'd switched to Richarlison like we did, he didn't do anything up front. I know Pickford ended up getting tier 2, but it's like 10 points. So that 10 points is going to be easily made up by a better option over a longer period. That one game doesn't change anything. You're basically looking for a monster haul, and for me, these single game days, it can happen, but these are the kind of ones you want to cover. I mean, if that was a Ronaldo single game day, I wouldn't hesitate to have Ronaldo because he could get that monster haul. Now, one of the players could between Wolves and Everton, but it's hard to know which one, and it's not as important to cover, I don't think, personally. For me, that's like if you've got the Wolves goalkeeper or Pickford's back fit by then yeah, stick the armband on him. But I wouldn't bust the gut to get them, because I think their fixtures. Well, Wolves carry on for a little while, to be fair, but Everton's are pretty bad after that as well. So
Everton's fixtures get absolutely disgusting after that. So they've got Wolves, and then it's immediately they've got Tottenham, Man City, Brentford, Liverpool, Arsenal, Palace, then Chelsea.
Yeah, it's not good, is it?
It's not good. It's not good. So
I'd be tempted to hold him
the period.
Now, to be honest, the Webster thing. I think because that's what you're doing, right? So I'd be tempted to hold him.
I'm tempted to hold Webster. Yeah, although I'm not entirely sure. I could possibly see myself, if I want to get Alonso in, I'm going to have to downgrade a midfielder, and I've still got Torres. So there's a chance I could bring in someone like Gallagher maybe to cover the Monday night and swap Webster for Alonso. But yeah, I'm still going to keep my ear to the ground on what's going on with Webster's injury. Obviously, he's probably not going to be back this upcoming weekend, but given the international break, he could be back after that. And I think he's a season keeper if he's back from then.
He very much is for me, and he did say after the international break. Now, if it is one more week, then it's one more week. But I guess you have to ask yourself: will you want to bring Webster back in? And if the answer is yes, then is it worth a transfer for someone and a transfer back for 3 or 4 games, not captained at that low budget? Probably not. I mean, you could argue last week maybe because it would have been an extra game. I did it to Marcal and it's failed miserably almost straight off the bat. So I'd be tempted to keep now personally. Mikey Yu says, what do you do if you own Pickford and Richarlison? Move them on, and for who? Richarlison, I mean, he's injured. I've already moved him on. You moved him on as well. I think you do move him on. If it's the same price bracket, then I think the obvious ones, although he might be injured as well, are just Bamford and Antonio. They're both around the same price. Probably wouldn't look anywhere else, to be honest. If you're going up, then obviously Lukaku's about to come into some really good games, and I don't think there's too many other forwards I'd look at apart from maybe Kane or Son if you can get there, which we're going to talk about in a bit. Pickford, I think you just get rid of him because I just don't think he's a good option personally. I don't think the Everton defence is particularly good, and I don't think Pickford's that good of an option. I understand why people went there because the fixtures were decent and he covered captain days, so fair enough. But as a pick for a long-term hold for the Sky team, I wouldn't hold him, so that's where it changes. I think you can just get rid of him and not worry about it. I don't think he's going to punish you. Again, we've already mentioned the goalkeepers. Personally, I'd look to either go up to Mendy if he's back fit or down to Raya, and I think those are the two best options right now. What do you think?
I totally agree. I think the two options that you've pointed out are probably the standout ones at the moment, and I'm struggling really to see past those. Possibly Ramsdale again. We talked about Ramsdale, but
if you need coverage,
they're the two.
FPL Sky Addict says, I know it's fairly common amongst engaged Sky managers to not switch the mids in the mid-price range, but is this something to reconsider if we target blocks of good fixtures on one or two of these? So I think he's talking about, like what you were saying, going for Sarr now, switching out Ben Rama or Traore, whoever out, and switching them around. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I would say within reason. What you also need to be aware of is that this season you're going to be switching your strikers around more than ever because we've just got those 4, 3.5 at the moment because Kane hasn't turned up, but those big options up front. So I think if you're going to start rotating your strikers, and now you're also thinking, well, can I rotate my midfielders too? You'll quickly find that you're racing through transfers at a rate that you probably aren't comfortable with.
Yeah.
And what I would say as well, if you're bringing in a player who's in the sevens price wise, even if it is someone at 7.8, 7.9 region, you're probably not wanting to be spending your transfers in that space because the gains are fairly limited. And the thing is, with players like Sarr, with players like Gray, even Traore, it's not that easy to predict when they're going to score, when they're going to contribute. They're 2-point merchants, so you can pencil them in for say 15, 20 2-pointers if they're going to play every game in a season. But when they haul, could be dotted around quite sporadically. I remember Ismail Assar the last time he was in the Premier League absolutely bossed Liverpool when Liverpool were unbeaten in the season to that point.
Yeah.
He ends up scoring a brace, man of the match, the whole lot. And these players are capable of doing that, even when the fixtures don't look great. So I'd be tempted to, if there's a real standout run. So, if you're looking at, let's say you've got, I'm trying to think, if you've got a team that have got Manchester City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Man United, say in the next 5, and the other player's team has Norwich, Burnley, Leeds, Brentford, Watford, that kind of run, then I can understand it. But it's a long season, and once you start making transfers within your midfield, and you don't actually need to, you'll quickly get to February, March, when you're actually looking to try and bring players in for 2 for nones with captaincies, and you've not got the transfers left to do it. So caution is what I'd urge.
Yeah, I think it's better to try and just keep them long term in that area. To be honest with you, by all means, try and identify who you think is the best options long term early, and get on them and make the transfers now. If you think Sarr's going to be the best player at that price across the season, which he might well be, then go for it. And why not? While the fixtures are still good, you could argue he's just missed the best one. But otherwise, try to avoid. I mean, for me, Gallagher, I think although the fixtures are bad to begin with, Mbeumo, I don't even know how to say his name. I've been listening to Mark now, so from Fantasy Football Scout, so he's entered my mind.
Mbeumo, I think it is.
Yeah, Mbeumo. So he calls him Mbommo, so it always enters my mind to try and say it like that. He's just so cheap as well. He's 7.2 million. At the end of the day, he's a midfielder playing up front. So like you said, it's a 2-point merchant. He's going to be 2 points most weeks, but there's going to be a week where he scores and gets man of the match, and suddenly he fills that gap with like a 15-pointer or whatever. So I kind of like him as well. for sort of just leaving them in. So I think Gallagher and him are good two players to enable you to do so much more with your defenders and your attackers.
Yeah.
And then a player around that 7.8 million that you can be flexible with, because there's so many players at that price. Traore, Sarr, Ben Rama, there's many others, Gray, there's loads of them. It seems a pretty good option to me. Neil, SkyFF21, do you reckon it's worth a sub from Gilmore to Elinosi just for next Sunday, as I don't want Kane or anyone from Arsenal and wouldn't touch Wolves with a barge pole? Really happy with the other 10 of my team, so I don't want to use any more transfers than I need to. So he's got no captain coverage, so I'm just going to bring up the fixtures here. How do I do that again? There we go. Let's have a look at them quickly to remind myself what the names are. He says he doesn't want Kane. I think that's where most people will be going, to be fair.
Yeah. I mean, Elyounoussi's looked quite good. I've had him. He's only got, he's not exactly torn up trees. He's got a few points, but nothing outstanding. I can see the merit in it. I mean, Gilmore got a tackle bonus tier 2 at the weekend. As long as he's starting in that team, you'll see before you have the chance to bring in Elyounoussi on Sunday that he's going to be, if Gilmore's played. I think if Gilmore's back on the bench, saying, and Norwich get a result and they look good, then maybe if you hear something from the manager that suggests that he's not going to be in the team long term. But I think Gilmore's a decent enough pick at that price, and I wouldn't be rushing to get him out if he's going to be starting. That said, I do think Elyounoussi is a good budget pick if you're absolutely bargain basement desperate to get the cheapest option you possibly can into the midfield. Then yeah. But if you're bringing someone in to captain them, I probably wouldn't be looking at Elyounoussi. I'd maybe be looking. I think all roads probably do lead back to Kane. Yeah. There's been a lot of discussion about, can you cover this person? Can you cover it with him here? Can you cover it with him there? If you just look at the fixtures, the next 3 weeks, at least, are all Kane stands out as the best captaincy option on that day, and all it takes is for Spurs to get a dodgy penalty and for him to trundle one into the goalkeeper's hands, and there you are as an 18-point captain straight off the bat. So, yeah, I would urge you to go back to the drawing board and think about it a little bit before you decide that you're avoiding Kane. But I appreciate he's done absolutely nothing for us to be advocating for him right now.
Yeah, I would just say if you don't want Kane, fair enough. But I wouldn't try and just force another captain in to cover it on that day. I'd just ignore the day if you don't want any of the players. Because Elionoussi's probably going to get... let's assume he starts he may not. I know you get to see the lineup on that day. But he may not start it. And even if he does, the likeliest score, is 2 points doubled to 4. And it's not a problem really, is it? It's all about covering Kane on that day or not covering Kane. So I wouldn't force it in just for that. And I think Gilmore over the season probably outscores Elyounoussi, because I think Gilmore will play more games than him. I could be wrong, because he's looked pretty damn well and he's actually pretty high on the XG stats and stuff. So it's just whether he's going to come in and out of the team. I feel like if he'd have scored or got an assist in this little period, then he'd have helped cement his place. Do you know what I mean? And because he's not, the manager might be tempted to just sort of change it up to see if he can get somewhere else. But they've been playing well and they've been getting results. So, maybe he likes what he's bringing to the team.
Just on Elyounoussi, there's a couple of games on tonight and he's on the bench and they've rotated the full team.
Okay.
Some of the main players. So, like Ward-Prowse and... Ward-Prowse, Bednarek, that kind of... Adams and stuff are on the bench. So, maybe he is...
Looking good, yeah.
Looking good, and their run of fixtures is good too. So they've got, they got Wolves, then they've got Chelsea, but they've got Leeds, Burnley, Watford, Villa. I think after that, so it does get quite good for them. But I would also just say he's clearly 6 point whatever he is for a reason, 6.2, 6.3. So you know what you're getting when you bring in a player that cheap. If he does end up dropping at the team, and Gilmore continues to play, and you've spent the budget that you've managed to gain from that transfer elsewhere, then you've kind of very, very, very short on options. So that's something I was cognizant of when I brought him in.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to FPL_JPB. It's my first season doing Sky. Spent a few years in the FPL community. Interested to hear which players you think are viable for Sky, which might tend to ignore in FPL, e.g. is Jorginho a decent shout? Yeah, so some of our earlier pods as well cover like the basics of the game. So I'd advise you to go check those out. FPL JPB tongue twister. They are on the other YouTube channel, I believe, on Fantasy Football Scout's main YouTube channel before we switched over. They give some of the feedback around that area. But yeah, there are plenty of options that are viable around the midfield, usually, who can offer alternatives and give us the passing and tackle bonus. I mean, Gilmore's one of them that's kind of put his hat in the ring. But this season, I think they're a little bit underwhelming so far. The cheaper ones, there don't seem to be any really sticking their hand up too much to me. Even the likes of Ndidi at 7.5 is quite popular, not particularly good at the moment. And the likes of the Man City guys, the Liverpool guys, so I'm talking the Thiagos, your Rodris, the people like that who will almost guaranteed to get it, seem to be getting rotated a little bit too much. So the real pull of these guys is the fact that they play every single week and they hit that 4 or 5 points every single week. And at the moment, they're not doing that because they're not in the team. So right now, I don't like anyone for that sort of role particularly. I'd say Gilmore's probably the closest, and even he's been rotated and not hit it every week.
Yeah, Jorginho, maybe it's an option still, but he's a bit more expensive. So yeah, probably wouldn't go there. I think, yeah, as you say, Gilmore's probably the one who is standing out at the moment as that kind of cheap fodder midfielder who
Romeo
might just tick
7-7.
over.
Romeo 7-7
Yeah.
is the other one that you could look at, but I think he's 7-7
But I
anyway.
think your shout of Embuemo, I think, is actually quite tempting. I don't know if you saw the highlights in the game at the weekend. I watched it,
Yeah,
but
very good.
you could have had a brace. Like, I think he hit the cross, like literally hit the stanchion between the post and the bar, towards the end of the game, which would have given him a brace, and could have probably taken man of the match off Tony as well. So he's tempting. He's tempting for sure. So, and he's pretty cheap as well. So yeah, there's a lot of options, I think, around the cheap midfielders, but certainly beyond Gilmore, I don't see many that are going to be consistent bonus. Kind of hang your hat on them getting 4 or 5 points a week. It doesn't look like that's going to be the case. So you're going to have to go for someone who's going to have to get goals.
Yeah. And the thing with Chelsea is they've now got that Saul guy, haven't they? So they've got 4 midfielders, Tuchel's chopping and changing already, especially around the Champions League. We still haven't seen whether he's got penalties or not, Jorginho. I still think it's probably going to be Lukaku, which changes things again. So right now, I just avoid all in that area and maybe just look for the cheap ones who are doing all right with the goals. So yeah, the likes of Sarr, at least he's got penalties and stuff to feed back on, shots on target. He's man of the match. If Watford win, he's going to get man of the match pretty much every game, I would have thought. And yeah, Mbeumo is only 0.3% owned in the top 1k and 0.45 overall. It's really, really cheap and really, really low owned. And I've got his points up on the screen, and as Niall was saying, these guys, they are just 2-point machines at the end of the day. Despite him looking great, he's got 2 points, 1, 2, 3 times in a row, then a 1-pointer, then an 8-pointer. So didn't even get that many points this week, despite looking great. And that's the problem with these guys. But he will fill that role of just sitting in there and allow you to do other things, I think. Okay, Scooby Jew says, with Torres missing out of the weekend and now starting midweek, is it time to bin him off? As 9.1 million. It's a lot of money essentially, and there's some other good options out there. So should I free up the cash? Now this is a real tough one. I think I'm going to hand it to you.
Yeah, thanks for that. So as of recording, I think he's just scored and he has been subbed off with 20 minutes to go. So I don't know what that says for the weekend. The good thing is we'll see the lineups. So, you're going to see the lineups at the weekend, 11:30. If he's not in the team, then you've got a decision to make. If he is in the team, you keep him, I think, because he's clearly capable of scoring. He's going to be playing in the number 9 role for City. We've gone over the reasons, the virtues of having him, but we did also say that there's a huge risk of rotation. And I do worry about him. It's difficult. He's the one who's given me most sleepless nights in the team. But I think that with the 3 big strikers, I think is going to be a requirement soon for those of us who don't have it. If you're sitting there with a midfielder of 9.1 who's just not delivering the business and he's being rotated and you can't captain him, then I can see the merits in downgrading him to someone cheaper to free up that budget to then invest in the rest of your team. So if put this, if he's not starting at the weekend, I'll be seriously thinking about his place in my team. Although they've got good games coming up after that, I just don't know if I can keep him, and he's not going to be taking the armband anytime soon either. So yeah, I know it's another on the fence answer, but it just depends on the circumstances and what happens in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. Torres was there because he just scored a 19-point haul. He's playing up front. He's their only striker. They had a few good games in amongst some bad ones, and he's not delivered in the game. So it's not just the fact that he got benched the other day. It's because he hasn't delivered, I suppose, at the end of the day. Now that could change at any point. But the next two games are really, really tough. And for me, I think you either get off him now, depending on what you need to do with your team. So that 9.1 million, there's so many defenders around that Premier League, like Varane, and even dropping down to the likes of Matip, Christensen, the Chelsea defenders. They're all around that price. So if you can switch him to one of those defenders, they're going to outscore Torres over the season anyway, I would say. Even if he plays up front, it's probably going to be, it's going to be pretty close. So I'd just do that. But I'm going to hold him myself because I'm prepared to accept the fact that he might not even play against the big teams. It might be Kevin De Bruyne up front in a false nine versus Chelsea and Liverpool, but just for that run afterwards. Because I'm stubborn. I want to see him start up front against one of these, the minnows, and hit me a haul before I even think about it. So I'm going to leave him in, and it's going to come now. I tell you, it's going to come.
Come on, man! Come on! Your stubbornness is not helping you. What about, while we're on the subject of stubbornness, and I don't mean to hit you where it hurts, but what are you doing about Ronaldo? Everyone wants to hear it.
Well, I will be getting Ronaldo at some point. It's just that the fixtures for Man United, I'm going to bring them up on my screen, are dreadful, essentially. They're right at the bottom of the tickers. They play home to Aston Villa, that's a decent game. Home to Everton, yeah, okay, they could do decent in that game. And then away to Leicester, maybe they're not that bad, are they? Leicester are horrific at the moment. But after that, it's Liverpool, Tottenham, Man City, and it's not a particularly good run for a little while. So I feel like I can maybe get away with it and have Kane, Lukaku, Salah in and amongst and do fine. But after that, he'll be coming in because I wanted to see what he looked like. I wanted to see whether I could cover him with other options for a few weeks, and it hasn't worked. And the thing with Ronaldo is he's hitting that shots on target all the time, isn't he? He's hitting the shots bonus, which, it's ridiculous. It's through the roof. So you could argue he could have had some penalties as well. So it could have been even worse. I feel like some of Ronaldo's goals were pretty lucky, I think, because he's kind of shot straight at the keeper or he's got rebounds and stuff. But by the same breath, he could have had some more penalties. So it could have been even worse for me. And yeah, I'll be getting him in. But I am still going to be stubborn and wait until at least after the Man City game and beyond. I haven't got the ticker further out than that at the moment. I can't remember where it is, but he'll be coming back in at some point. Just not yet. So it's going to be another 3 weeks of pain probably, or even 6 weeks. Do you think I should just bin that and just get him in?
Nah. I think probably now it's quite difficult, but because I think you've obviously made the decision to go with two big hitters for now, so it would require moving someone else in your team.
Well, Torres would have to come out.
Yeah, Torres would have to come out, and then.
And it's the obvious answer. It's the obvious answer to put Torres down to a cheap midfielder. I mean, I don't have Gallagher, so I could have Gallagher come in, and then I could, raise one of my forwards. But again, if Antonio sat in my team, I've kept him, and he's gonna deliver for me while everyone's got rid of him. I'm telling you.
Well, he certainly could, and you've got a captain option already this weekend in Mark Hall, presuming he plays, and then my understanding is that you don't need Kane because Antonio could cover you the next couple of weeks after that, right? so yeah, there's a 12 million sized hole in your team if you're not getting Kane, and you could have Ronaldo instead.
No, I am getting Kane in that team. It's Salah that's coming out.
Kane, okay.
Yeah, Salah that's coming out. Salah versus Watford is not going to be in my team. That is going to be another pain earmarked fixture for me.
I'm going to be the same, and that's the thing. And you look at Salah's returns. The guy, you put the armband on him, right? And you just don't even bother watching the football. Turn it back on later, and you've got somewhere between 20 and 35 points. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And to think that we're going to be avoiding him when he's got Watford, like, what is this game all about? But then if you have him, you're going to have to sacrifice on Lukaku against whoever he's got, Southampton or Norwich, and then Kane's got these captain games. And this is where I really think the case for having three strikers, big strikers, is huge. The there's going to be a lot of sleepless nights for everyone this season with the big players that are capable of getting big hauls. But if you've only got 2 out of the 4, then it's just going to make life very tricky. So I wish you good luck.
Well, my B team is actually, I think it's even higher than your A team at the moment. So, and that has got the 3 premiums up front. It's got the money for it. So, although I'm talking about the A team in this podcast, I'm going to transition seamlessly at some point, and you're not going to notice. I'm just going to start talking about my B team because that has had Ronaldo as captain. It's had some bad luck as well. Don't get me wrong. I bought in Llorente in that team, and he got injured within 20 minutes. And there's been some dodgy stuff going on there as well. But it's doing all right. So the 3 premium up front looks the better option at the moment. And on that note, the final question we've got is from FPL Hambo, and he says, "Are you going to transition to the threemium? So the 3 premium strikers up front."
I love that. Yeah. I love that. That's good.
The problem he's got is that he'd have to lose Virgil van Dijk to be able to do it, but he says he's not sure he can drop the big guy. What do you think?
Difficult. I'm sure he's got other players in his team that he can downgrade. Listen, if he waits till this weekend, he'll get another injury and he'll be absolutely fine. He wanted to take out Van Dijk, he'll take someone else instead. But yeah, I mean, you could downgrade Van Dijk to maybe a Chelsea defender. I wouldn't want to take Van Dijk out if you had him.
I really wouldn't. No.
To answer the first part of his question, the threemium, I think, is what's going to be known from now on this podcast. Is the way I'm definitely going to go on both my teams, and I think it is the way to go. Just as I've just outlined before about the fact that you're going to have to miss so many games where the player is going to be highly captained and could haul hugely. So yeah, I think for sure. In terms of Van Dijk, the games do get a little bit trickier, and I've not been blown away by Liverpool's, certainly not their possession stats. Again, at the weekend, I think he fell short. So that's maybe something to have a look at. But I think what are they, maybe the bottom half, maybe lower end of the fixture ticker. Yeah, the lower end of the fixture ticker. But I still think if you've got Van Dijk and he's playing every game, he's returning, they're keeping clean sheets, I wouldn't be in a rush to take him out. I'd look at other parts of your team to see if I could make the saving. I wouldn't be taking it Van Dijk. Yeah,
no, I do agree. But what you touched on there about Van Dijk's a good point. Really, he got past his tier 2 and a clean sheet versus Norwich. Now, I think the clean sheet versus Norwich was pretty lucky, to be fair, but he got it. Versus Burnley, again, I thought that was a really lucky clean sheet. He didn't get passing in that game, 2-0, fair enough. Versus Chelsea, he got past his tier 2, but they had a red card. So that's obviously affected the game, didn't get a clean sheet. He then picked up a clean sheet versus Leeds, didn't get passing. Now, to be honest, that's not really an issue because rarely teams get it against Leeds just because of their style. Yeah. So I wouldn't really worry there. But then again, home to Palace, 3-0. Now, he got the clean sheet. Again, some could argue slightly fortuitous, but I thought that was probably a little bit more deserved, that one. And then he picked up an assist, which is great, but he's not going to do that particularly often. And he didn't get passing in that game. So for 10.2 million, if he's not going to be getting the passing, which could change, I don't think he's worth the money, is the bottom line. Because I think he possibly is worth the money, but there's other options that are getting the passing bonus that are cheaper. So therefore, they are better options. And having that 3 premium up front it definitely looks the way to go. So as much as I hate to say it, I think if that is his only option, then getting rid of him before he plays the likes of Brentford and Man City, who look pretty good, and then he's got Man United as well in the next 4. It looks probably a pretty good time. So get it done. Get it done. Unless you've got other options.
You said it, not me.
Yeah.
Other options first, I would say, but I think you make a strong case. The fact that they didn't get passing bonus at home to Burnley and at home to Palace, and the alarm bells surely ringing a little bit on that front, because let's go back reverse a couple of seasons ago, you'd be getting 90 passes, pushing 100 passes in games like that. So that's something to monitor, at least if for those of us who don't have any Liverpool defenders, in terms of who we're going to bring in the long term.
Yeah, I know they've had some injuries in midfield and they've not been able to play their first choice midfield, but I would have thought, if anything, their passing would actually go up when they've got the likes of Thiago in there, who was just like an absolute pass merchant. You've got Fabinho and him in centre midfield. I'd expect Van Dijk's passing numbers to go right up. So maybe that does change in the future when they sort that out. And let's not
I think the argument with Thiago is that he maybe slows the game down a little bit. So yes, he does pass the ball a bit, but yeah, possibly.
Well,
but I think
obviously not.
Palace,
that's the thing.
No. Palace have maybe not gone back as far as the Burnley game, but they did have a bit of a makeshift midfield. But certainly Palace have been keeping the ball a bit more. So maybe we're judging Palace by standards of a couple of Roy Hodgson standards, basically. But speaking about Palace, speaking about possession, speaking about defenders, do we think that Duffy or the Brighton defence, who I imagine a lot of people looked to in the absence of Webster, who has been transferred out by a lot of teams, I'm not sure that they will actually even pick up passing against Palace on that Monday night game coming up. And if they don't, you're reliant on a clean sheet, and Palace have been looking decent enough going forward. So I'm actually think if I am to cover that game, I'm probably veering more towards the Gallaghers than I am towards the Brighton defenders. Although I think Duffy still remains a good option, and if anyone hasn't made the move yet from Webster or is looking for a cheap defender, Potter came out over the weekend and said some pretty positive things about Duffy, that they didn't look for a replacement for White during the summer because they knew Duffy was coming back. Amazing, because he looked like Bambi on stilts, I think, when he played for Celtic last year. But he's played really well so far, so he could be a decent enough option going forward long term. Maybe he's nailed himself down in that team. But yeah, long way of saying it, but I'm not sure Brighton are going to be an absolute stick-on for passes against Palace on Monday.
Yeah, I agree. Usually it works the other way around. They look fantastic in Scotland and they come to England and it doesn't quite work out. We got in No, I wasn't trying to stick the knife in, honestly.
No, that's all right.
Yeah, well, no, Robertson even play in Scotland? Just because he's Scottish, I'm assuming he did. Because he came from Hull originally,
he played for Dundee United, then he went down to
Hull.
But I mean, listen, we just talked about Van Dijk. Remember, Van Dijk played for
Celtic
for a number of years.
He did, yeah. And Tierney is finally sort of coming good, I guess.
Yeah.
I think I'm with you though for that game. Just off on a tangent, I think I'd love to have Zaha or Edouard for that game. I feel like they could get a really big haul in that. I'm not sure the passing bonus is nailed. I think clean sheets are ropey for either side. I mean, it could be a bore off because Palace do struggle to score at the end of the day most of the time, despite having a lot of the ball. And Brighton are similar. They usually have quite a lot of the ball and can't really actually get the goals. But it feels like a game that the likes of Zaha could light up as usual. So I given the choice, I'd go for him. The problem is he's a striker, and obviously Edouard as well. So yeah, Gallagher it'll be probably, who's also looking pretty damn good, to be fair. Let's do the preview then, mate, and look at this week and obviously any plans or anything you've noticed in the fixtures that we should take note of. First of all, I mean, there's two 12:30 games. I know one of them got moved for some sort of concert or something. I can't remember what it was now, but we've got two games at 12:30, which is Man United, Villa, Chelsea, Man City. So we get to see all four lineups, which is a rare treat for an early game. So is anything in those lineups going to affect your decisions? I guess it's hard to say now without seeing them. But for example, if Torres isn't in the team for this game, are you going to be doing anything with him?
Exactly. I think the Chelsea-Man City game, that's where the lineups will be most interesting. I think obviously Man United, you'd expect them to line up as they usually do. But yeah, it'll be Torres I'll be looking to. I think some people will be thinking about Mendy. What's the situation with him? Is he going to be back? And then you've got the usual rotation with both teams. So who lines up in defence for either side? Thinking more Chelsea, Christensen, what happens with him, Azpilicueta. But yeah, Torres will be where my eyes will turn. And if he's not starting, I'll probably have a look and see what Alonso is doing, if he's sitting on the bench or if he's starting, because there's definitely a case to be made there for a move to Alonso.
Although 2 points is probably the expected return in that game, right? Or do you think Chelsea will get a clean sheet?
No, I suspect they probably won't. But he's so advanced. He's playing like a winger. So He could get attacking returns. I wouldn't rule him out in any game right now.
No. I suspect that a popular transfer that day will actually be... Because I think Kevin De Bruyne has got a good chance of playing false nine, simply because he's done it so often in the big games that he's deployed him there, and he's played him again, Kevin De Bruyne, midweek here, so he's clearly trying to get some minutes behind him in preparation for this game. Now, I think a lot of it has got to do with the fact of whether Gundogan's fit, because I think he's still potentially injured. If he's out, then I think that Kevin De Bruyne will be in midfield and Torres will be up front, and maybe there's an element of, at the end of the day, what Pep's tried in these games hasn't worked of late. That Kevin De Bruyne up front thing hasn't really worked. So part of me thinks, will he do it again because he's quite stubborn? At the end of the day, Chelsea keep the ball so much that he wants to just get as many midfielders in to try and keep the ball and play them at their own game, which he's tried before. Or will he try something different? Will he try to put Torres up front and catch them on the break, which I think would be the better option, and play De Bruyne in midfield, especially if Gundogan is injured. So I think a lot hinges on that. But at the end of the day, we get to see the lineups, and I think that a popular transfer will be, if he's not playing, Torres out for either a Chelsea defender, Alonso, like you say, or even Sarr, because they play at 3 o'clock home to Newcastle. He's off the back of a massive haul. Newcastle can't defend, and if you don't have him in your team, it just seems an obvious move to me to get him in or to fix the problem. So, yeah, I have Sarr in my B team, and that's why it's doing pretty well because of last week. So I don't have to worry there. For my A team, if Torres isn't playing, I'm probably still going to keep him, like I already suggested. But I may be tempted, because in that team I don't actually have any coverage for the Palace-Brighton game, to leave him and then obviously just bring in Gallagher on the Monday night for him or something. I'm not quite sure. The other games, Leicester Burnley, I mean, there's nothing really to talk about there, is there? Both teams are pretty horrific at the moment. I don't think many people have got players from those teams. I suspect most people will be on Ronaldo captain. Is that what you're going to be doing? Man United home to Villa?
Probably, yes, probably. But Salah, again, is a huge threat. And I think in your A team, I'm guessing you're probably going to be on Salah. But yeah, I think at the moment it's on Ronaldo, but I mean, it's difficult to look past Salah in any game.
It is. Brentford have looked really good, and it's 5:30. But I just think at the end of the day, it's Salah and it's Liverpool, and the wheels are bound to come off Brentford at some point. I mean, I don't think they've played a team quite as good as Liverpool yet. But Ronaldo at home, I know Villa's defence has not been that bad. It's been okay. He's going to get the shots bonus, isn't he, though? That's the thing. You know that you've already can rely on that. Maybe Man United haven't had a penalty so far this season, and they could have potentially had one the other day, so I wouldn't be surprised if he gets one in this game. The referee's just making up for it. For me, yeah, it's on Salah at the moment, but again, I'm tempted to go with Antonio, but I did this last time. Did Antonio over Ronaldo. Ronaldo gets a brace man of the match, and Antonio gets sent off. But Antonio versus Leeds, is that not a really good game for him? I mean, they've got no defenders or anything. I feel like he could absolutely destroy them.
He could. But I would, even if I had Antonio, I think I'd probably still go to Salah, even in your situation if you're not got Ronaldo. But no, there's definitely a case to be made for Antonio, but I don't know, man. I'm just you've got to stick with the big hitters. Salah. I think you talked about Ronaldo's shots bonus. I was just checking there. Salah's had shot bonus in every single game this season.
Okay, lovely.
So
okay.
Both of those players are starting on 4. Ronaldo's probably starting on 5. And yeah, Antonio was good, but he's starting on 2. So
no, he's not. Look, his price is confusing people. His stats are up there with the best of them.
His stats are good, but even in the game that he got sent off, he didn't do anything. It was the 95th minute he got sent off. Remember, and I think he had 1 shot on target, that maybe even none. Hadn't really threatened the goal at all, and that was against Southampton. So
that's not going to happen versus Leeds, is it? It's going to be a basketball match.
You would hope so. Listen, I think Antonio could score big, but I think Salah and Ronaldo will score big, and that's the difference.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, I'm talking a big game. My captain's on Salah right now, so there you go. I'm just getting it in there, so when Antonio hauls, I can say I told you so. See, this is the trick to podcasting now. You got to act.
I'm getting blamed for Richarlison.
Yeah,
blamed even Antonio.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Everton at home to Norwich. I suppose not many people have got many assets there anymore. I wouldn't consider captaining any of them, even though Norwich are clearly a game to target. And if you've got any Everton player whatsoever, despite them looking awful the other day, I wouldn't be surprised if they get points in this game, to be fair. I don't think anyone would, the way Norwich have been playing. I suppose the thought process though behind the Salah thing is Brentford I mean, they have looked really tight. They are gonna try to win this 1-0, aren't they? Or 0-0, essentially. That is what their whole game plan is. Now, whether they're successful or not is a completely different matter. Man United at home to Villa. Yeah, you could argue Villa will play defensive and on the counter, but I think they will try to offer something. I mean, they spent a lot of money. They're close to a top 10 side. They should be trying to give Man United a game, if you see what I mean. Whereas Brentford have got no reason to try and give Liverpool a game whatsoever. So I think if I had both, I'd probably just edge towards Ronaldo because I feel like he's just the he's going to be picked by most people, I suppose. And it's probably the slightly better fixture. Just for maybe not the slightly better fixture, but because it's a home game and the home games have just been so good so far. That's the main reason for me. But yeah, mine will be Speed Salah, and I hope he can outscore Ronaldo. We'll see. On Sunday the 26th of September, currently, if I was just to go with my team how it is at the moment, it would be Traore as captain, which is a guaranteed 4-pointer. So I'm going to be bringing in Harry Kane, and it's going to be for Salah, which I think is a popular move that people have put down. I think if you're on the freemium, a lot of people have looked at maybe taking Ronaldo out at this point instead. But I'm going to go for Kane. Spurs have been pretty dreadful. Kane's looked pretty bad. But this is a derby game. He loves scoring against Arsenal. Not that should matter. But more than that, he's just a quality player who is on the pitch, and therefore, like you said, just takes one penalty, one off his shin, one shooting opportunity, and he's going to get points. And I have no doubt in my mind that, Kane might not hit the heights of last season, because he had a real standout season, and obviously they've got a new manager, so things are slightly different. But there's no way Kane just completely drops off the radar for me. He's still, and if he's fit, and I use that term loosely with Kane because we know that he takes a long time to come back from injury sometimes. And I know at the beginning of the season he wasn't quite right. He's had a few games. It's just going to take a moment for him to click, and this little run is the time to get him because he just offers a captain choice for so many more weeks coming up in the next 3 or 4 weeks. And even if he doesn't do it in this one or the next one, he's going to do it in one of them, and it's going to hurt. So I'm going to get Harry Kane in.
Yeah, I mean, if you were born yesterday with only this season's kind of games to go by, you wouldn't be going anywhere near Harry Kane. But we all know what he can do, and he's going to be highly owned, I think, after this weekend. Highly captained. You can try and be smart, I think, and you can probably find a way to navigate through the next few weeks without him. But yeah, I mean, it's
Antonio. Essentially. If you've got Antonio,
exactly.
you can avoid it basically. But
definitely, that's the way to go. I think if you've got Antonio and you're absolutely adamant you're not bringing in Kane, then yeah. But if you've not got Antonio and you're also trying to find a way to not have Kane, you're going to be performing contortions and trying to squeeze yourself into tight spaces, I think, over the next few weeks, when it's probably just easier to get him. At the moment, my armband is on El Yunusi, but that's simply because Salah hasn't played yet, and when he does play on Saturday, I'll probably bring in Kane on Sunday.
Yeah, I've got a feeling that Ronaldo and Salah will probably do what they usually do and get a load of points, and then people are going to be really hesitant to make that move on Sunday. We'll see.
And the thing is, we're talking about injuries. Wouldn't it be nice if maybe Salah or Ronaldo picked up a small enough injury that saw them not be able to travel for the international break and maybe miss 1 or 2 games after it, so you could bring Kane in full confidence that you're not going to miss out on that 25-point haul from the other one.
Yeah, fair. And I think if you can't get to Kane, maybe you're not prepared to lose Salah or Ronaldo. Maybe you've only got enough money for Son. Then in previous seasons I'd have said don't do it, just get Kane. But I think in this season, Son's shown, off the back of last one as well, to be fair, and the fact that he's scoring more points than Kane at the moment, looking as lethal as ever. I don't think it's terrible. I think you can go Son instead, and potentially you could outscore Kane for a start, but I think you could get close. I don't think there's too much of a difference. I think it's pretty much penalties that swing it, but other than that, I don't think there's too much between them right now.
Yep, fair point. Especially if you've not got the budget to go Kane, I don't think so.
Yeah, basically I wouldn't make 2 transfers to turn Son into Kane, put it that way. But if you just want to have one option, then I think you can go Son. At the end of the day, these are the kind of plays where if a lot of the top managers are going for Kane and you swing with Son instead for 4 weeks, at the end of the day, if luck's shining on your side, you've not only made it up on the casuals who don't bother with the fixed turn like this or all these captaincy options, but you've then made it up on the top managers as well. And there's these kind of moves that sometimes can benefit you. More often they don't at the end of the day, but they can do. And it's an option, I think, if you can't afford him. And then finally Palace-Brighton, where I don't have any coverage, and I'll probably be finding a way to get Gallagher. No doubt I'll have picked up another injury at some point during this games, and it'll make my decision for me. That's probably what I'll do. If not, and say, for example, Markel's been dropped for the Southampton game, which I'm expecting it to happen, and Duffy's starting for Palace, I'm just going to switch Duffy in for him and probably give him the armband, and I'd expect that'll probably be a 2-point, a double to 4, because I think Palace will probably score and he probably won't get passing bonus, but I like him as a long-term option, so that's why I'd do it.
Yeah, same here. Undecided as yet. Don't have coverage for either because Webster's still injured. Leaning towards Gallagher, but there may be a scenario in which someone gets injured or someone doesn't start at the weekend and looks like they're not going to get back in the team, and I can rejiggle my team, and I'll end up having no option but to bring Duffy in. So, yeah, both those options I think will be probably the most captained on either team. But there's also a case we made for Edouard. You talked about Zaha. Maybe if you wanted to just have I think
Zaha would be the best, yeah.
Yeah. And then on the Brighton side, some people might also have Sanchez or Dunk. So, and also the new wing back they brought in, Cucurella, I think his name is. Apparently he looked great at the weekend. I didn't see the whole game. I saw the highlights. He was very good.
Got man of the match,
He picked up man of the match in Sky too. So he might be someone that you look at. He's only slightly more expensive than Duffy, and still could be value in that Brighton defence.
Or you do the big brain play and you get rid of Pickford and you bring in Guaita, who is doing really well, Niall. He's doing well for this Palace side.
Yeah, that's true. Look, you know what? I think you should do that, man. Put your money where your mouth is and bring in Guaita this week.
I tell you, if Mendy's injured for 2 or 3 weeks, he might be coming in. God's sake. How does Mendy just pick up a random shoulder injury, man? It's like everyone else's goalkeeper plays like 38 games a season, but I managed to find the one who's going to get rotated throughout the season. Or
I brought him in last year and he got rotated in a random game. He wasn't even injured. Like this season, at least he's injured. He was rotated for Kepa last season, and I was relying on him. But yeah, these things happen, I guess. But I think if you've got Mendy, I wouldn't be too worried unless he's going to be out for a number of weeks. I think he's the best goalkeeper in the game, albeit you're paying a premium for him. But I think that it'll pay off in the long term.
Yeah, I agree. All right, I think we should wrap it up there then. Unless you've got anything else you want to add, any top tips, anything out there that you want to throw in?
Oh no, I've put it all on the table. That's me for this week.
Good man. Okay, so we'll end it there, guys. As ever, I'll give a quick nod to the members area. We didn't actually touch on it too much, but we had the ticker up on the screen there for you to look at, and that's really helpful just to notice those fixture swings. So, getting off Ronaldo, as we suggested, sort of, at some point is a good idea. And Chelsea, obviously, with the fantastic run they've upcoming. I mean, I've got 4 Chelsea assets in my team. In my B team, I've got 5, I think, maybe 6. So I'm really hoping this is the point where I catch up because of those really juicy fixtures, and then obviously all their passing numbers, which are in the member stats as well, will lead you to the players such as Christensen who can really top up those points. I hope. All right, it's a bye from me.
Bye from me.
Catch you later, guys.